Have you ever wondered what is it that makes it so difficult to decide whether someone's being a real asshole towards us or whether we are simply being too sensitive? Or why it is that we can justify situations that are clearly not good for us? What is it that sits at the core of the difficulty reading a situation and whether it's good for us or not, or whether we should go left or right? This channel is Meditation Amsterdam. My name is Pablo, and today I want to talk about how disconnection in our psychosomatics, caused by either trauma or perhaps simply inherited disconnections, makes it so that we find it difficult to use our body as the radar that it is for navigating reality. I've spoken in yesterday's video about how trauma, whether it is inborn, inherited, perhaps a result of something difficult that happens in our lives, ends up creating a disconnection in our psychosomatics. It is creating a situation in which we find it difficult to feel something. It's too threatening. We don't know how to deal with it. And so we disconnect from those sensations. And I've also mentioned how that disconnection creates a blind spot in your psychosomatics. A part of yourself that you can't feel, you can't perceive. And so it is safe to say that what starts as being a protective mechanism of disassociation so that we don't have to feel something that we are not ready to feel, once the danger is over, simply becomes a blind spot. It simply becomes something that we can't access. And anything that we are cut off from in our psychosomatics becomes a blind spot, not just of our own bodily sensations, but a blind spot of how to relate to the external world. You see, our brains don't live in a vacuum. They don't live in a vat. Our minds gather their information through our senses, and our body is a kind of radar against which we can sense check whether something feels okay or doesn't feel okay. Now, you can argue that this is an egoic mechanism and that the body is simply judging what feels pleasurable versus not. But at the end of the day, it's all you have to navigate whether something feels correct for you or not. And what developmental, inherited, and environmental trauma do is, through the disconnections that it creates in our psychosomatics, it makes us blind to what the body would otherwise be telling us. So it would be the equivalent of jamming our radar. So the body is our radar. We use it to sense check how something feels. Does it feel correct? Does it feel icky? Does it feel fluffy, vague, confusing? These are not just states of mind, but they are states of body-mind. And you could argue that the more trauma you are holding within, the more you have disconnected yourself from your psychosomatics in order to protect yourself, the less you are able to navigate reality because you can't get a read on the ground for what's happening. And so what then will tend to happen is the head will try to invent its own reasoning. It will try to use logic in order to navigate things. The problem, though, is logic can justify pretty much anything. The head, as a thinking tool, can be used to justify either side of pretty much any case. It can argue any case. And this is one of the reasons, perhaps not the primary reason, in which we go into thinking loops. You see, when we can't get a read on what's happening in our body, we start to ping between two prongs of either a dilemma, such as, am I being mistreated or am I simply too sensitive? Or such as, is this the best course of action for me, or am I simply being selfish and chasing what feels best or most convenient? All of those kind of indecisions come from the fact that our mind is spinning its wheel in a mental world that can argue pretty much anything. And we are unable to use our body as a radar for sense checking and guiding our decisions. Now, it's true to say that in sense checking with our body, we will be sense checking for perhaps what feels more pleasurable. And that would be a gross use of the body for simply saying, hey, this feels better, and therefore I'm going with that. But as our intuition becomes refined and we start to be able to make a distinction between simple pleasure-seeking momentum of the body versus sense-checking whether something feels in line with higher goals or a higher intent that we have set for ourselves, then the body can become a real tool. There is a scene in The Lord of the Rings where they're navigating in some caves, and Gandalf can no longer remember whether they have to go left or right. And so they sit there for a while. They're talking about all kinds of stuff, and then he suddenly goes, "Ha! I know which way it is. It's left." And then Frodo goes, "Oh, you remember the way?" He says, "No, but left simply smells better." And that's a kind of sort of a Tolkien metaphor for you are using your embodied senses to guide whether you go left or right, as opposed to trying to force the thinking mind, force only the logical module of your intelligence to navigate reality, because reality is a fully embodied type of affair. And therefore not listening to what the body is telling you is a terrible, terrible idea. It's going to land you in all kinds of awkward and silly situations, which the mind can justify. And then only after the fact realize that you were getting yourself into trouble by not getting a read on what your body was trying to tell you. But it could also be the case that you simply can't, because your mind-body connection, your psychosomatics, are riddled with disconnections that need to be repaired in order for the body to act as a proper radar for what you want to achieve, or for orienting yourself every time towards something that is constructive, creative, and wholesome for you, as opposed to justifying unwholesome things with your mind, which, as we said, can pretty much justify anything and can argue both sides of pretty much any case. Now, I'm very curious to what you have to say, so do share it in the comments if you find this interesting. And also keep in mind that other people may benefit from this kind of content, so if you think it is valuable, then do like, share, and subscribe. And as usual, I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. And thanks for listening. Cheerio, and until then, bye bye.